what you were experiencing, I decided to come back because I just have to kind of make a statement that it is interesting that the UK is experiencing this, and also a lot more people are becoming vocal. I'm very happy for that they're becoming more vocal. It is interesting, though, that this kind of stuff has been happening for a really long time. Maybe not like the grooming whatever things, but
the grooming gang's been going on for 30 years now.
Yeah,
at least like since it's been tracked.
Yeah, and the same thing is kind of just the violence against females, the everyday behavior. I mean, you've seen it on Clubhouse. It's hard to have for women to even have a voice and not get interrupted, not to get. It's just I have to fight in order to be heard, and I just won't anymore. Depending on the audience, depending on the what do you call the subject. If it's something that's very important to me, but most of the time, even if it isn't important, a subject that's very important to me, it's not. People won't listen anyways. You have to know your audience. You have to know I know what I think. I know what I feel. Does anybody else care? Does anybody else want to hear it? And when I know that they don't, then I won't. It's as simple as that, because it doesn't matter. And there's a time for stating and for speaking, and there's a time for listening. And people here at Clubhouse, and it is what it is. It's not a complaint, because I'm here, obviously. So, and not in this room either. But most of it is people wanting to fight, to get a rise, to get that dopamine, and also to fight to get heard. And luckily, there's more rooms now, finally, of people speaking some very important things and finally listening to each other. And that's really cool. And there's a whole lot of other ones that are fighting and that nonsense and people like that, because everybody. It seems that a lot of people really love the Jerry Springer stuff. So that's always going to exist. But yeah, and I'll close this so I don't drone on. That there's everybody who makes decisions, like everybody in this room who made a decision today to voice, to support women. It's very appreciated. It's appreciated too, because the fact is that I'm going to go ahead and say we, because almost every woman I talk to, they just get tired of having to fight so hard to talk, just to talk and to share their perspectives, and it's valuable, and it's getting lost. So, the fact that there's others who will support them, and I'm not saying like support without reason, like absolutely criticize, absolutely question things like that, but to just outwardly shut people down just because you don't like, that happens on the daily. Thanks for letting me help.
Really quickly, just wanted to say good morning to Hakeem.
Hi, Hakima. How are you?
Good morning. Hey, Sheriff Deputy. Good morning, everyone. I'm pretty good. How you guys doing this morning?
Doing pretty good. Happy Friday Eve, y'all.
Happy Friday Eve is great.
I have to play these head games with myself in anticipation of the weekend.
Yeah, everybody here, I hope you heard that. Oops. I hope you heard that. Just thank you, everybody. Just thank you for supporting the women and everybody, and the fellow men who are willing to listen. It's just thank you.
I mean, Kristen, I'll be honest, I go into other rooms and, I'll be obnoxious as fuck and like talk over people and stuff like that. But I mean, I highly respect the moderators in the room, and I know how to act and behave when I'm in a room where like this kind of stuff really matters. So I think that's kind of it,
I mean, I'm here to learn but more than anything, to be honest with you, and I learned a shit ton in this conversation. I had no clue. I mean, I heard random things. I didn't know really what they meant. I never really looked into them, and you just explained a lot to me. I thought it was super helpful.
George, I sent you an invite. I see your hand raised. Good morning.
Good morning. I didn't realize I had raised my hand.
No worries.
AI though. She's GPT-5. It takes you places. It's a good teacher and a good learner. I'm just waking up.
Sorry, darling, you came up.
Pretty good. How about you, Kristen?
I'm good. Or Devin, or my friend, if you guys have anything to share.
Serendipity. Do you realize that that interaction with Jarl this morning is the most contentious interaction that this room has had in like a week? And it says a lot about this room, because that wasn't very bad, and that's literally the worst that we've had. Isn't that crazy? This room is super chill.
That could be a good or a bad thing, Mike. We got to give the people what they want to see.
That's true. Depends if you're going for audience size or
Charles, in spite of Charles' extremely critical opinions of me, when I have never been anything but hospitable to him, Charles is always welcome to come on this stage and spit his opinions.
I just wouldn't leave it at melanated people. It is in playing the same role or different roles on melanated people. So I appreciate Nye putting herself out there and stating such a thing. But I want to push back on that, so to speak, because I definitely hear white people supporting idiotic ideas. So I just wanted to add that.
Well, thank you, Devin. I'm not sure what you were referring to, but when I said brown-faced people, I was specifically referring to the groomer gangs in the UK. As far as I know, according to the media, these are white folks harboring these girls, and I'm not saying that white men or white people aren't, we don't have our criminals in the sex trafficking and rape area. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the UK and the UK media has specifically noted that the groomer gangs are these immigrants, and these immigrants are just so happen to be brown-faced folks from, Muslim countries and African countries. But I think the groomer gangs specifically are these kind of Arab Muslim types.
I guess it's just the last person one interacted with, which leaves an impression. I hear white people recently say pretty, it's basically leftists that I find supportive of these things. I mean, most of the population must have elected these people to government, and most of them, I don't know what the population breakdown is in Great Britain, but a portion of white people voted people into office who tolerate these crimes.
I think the African American community has been voting leftists for decades, as far as I understand, by huge margins.
But nobody here is that stupid to fucking, hey, let's start covering this up. It's like a cultural issue. This is not a debate. It's not about race. It's not about the color of the skin. It's about what kind of culture are you accepting in your fucking country. And it's disgusting that we're not saying, hey, let's prosecute these people. The UK signed into a stupid treaty in the 1960s that prevents them from being able to deport any of these people. So that's part of the bigger problem. Germany and all these other countries that fucked around and found out because they were colonists and imperialists. It's like, hey, you fucked around. Now people are saying, hey, you have to really have a sense of responsibility. You have to give back to those society, help those people. Well, you keep bringing in the wrong kind of people. You're not really doing background checks. You're not really doing any of these things. And it's just because you feel guilty. You should be responsible not only to the people that you've displaced around the world, but to the people that you have a responsibility to in your own country. And it's a shame because a few years ago I wanted to work in fucking England. This kind of shit just kept coming up, and I was like, okay, you know what, this is not really the kind of place. And it's like a bank wanted to pay £400,000 for us to go work there, and it's like, no, I'd rather not. I'd rather not go work in the fucking UK because it's disgusting like that. And I'm not saying people's disgusting. I'm saying the culture has collapsed, and you no longer have safety. You have people being harassed, and like that little Scottish girl, that little fucking Scottish girl who's like, yo, I got a knife and a little pickaxe. When it comes to that, that's when I've had enough. That's fucking just.
I know, man. I know. I moved here 3 years ago. By the way, if you had gotten a $400,000 banking job, the amount of taxes that you pay, you'd probably walk away with about $180,000 a year. It's like fucking insane how much they're taxing people on variable rates. So if you earn more, you get taxed more. But it's insane amounts of it. It's fucking crazy. But yeah, that little girl, it's gone so viral that the UK can't cover this up anymore. They've been trying to cover it up for years. Their whole narrative is falling apart. And did you hear about the Lucy Connolly woman who went to prison for a longer term than literal rapists in this country because she said, for all I care, burn the hotels down or whatever on social media? That case is obscene. Got sentenced to prison for 31 months, and rapists are getting out in 24. It's a completely backwards, fucked up system here, and we're just looking to get out now. My wife and I are trying to get. We have an infant daughter. We don't want to be here. We don't feel safe with our daughter growing up here.
I'm just interjecting real quick. Hey, Io and Dr. J, welcome to the state.
Yay!
To the chat, Celesta, I would say I don't even know. I don't know if it's incompetence at this point or if it's on purpose, but it's getting pretty close to being on purpose at this point. It's just obscene what's going on here. And this is the thing: is the British people are at the end of their rope. They're not taking it any longer, and this is why we have nationwide protests every week. If I don't mean to go back on the grooming gang things, but there was an independent report on it saying that there are actually, instead of 50 towns and cities affected, it's actually closer to 85 after they investigated it, and that they're still ongoing. They haven't been tracked down. They haven't been prosecuted. Most of these guys that have done this they're still active in tons of regions. So the police don't want to do anything about it, and this is why the people in the UK are so fucking done. And this is why I'm getting the hell out of this country, because, this is the most inept thing I've ever seen in my life. And, it's crazy.
Ewan, I have a question for you. So you mentioned that the Conservative Party in England, the AOC would fit in nicely, and that's how liberal it really is kind of skewed there. Do you think that can you correlate that with the idea that America is obviously on a pushback toward hyper-liberalism and, extreme liberal politics when it comes to like fighting back on transgender agenda and like the goofy stuff that politics have taken us to in America. So we're on a trend of fighting back against that. Would you say there's a correlation between where extreme liberal politics can take us in the United States and what London is seeing today?
I think that the UK, the people that live in the UK are actually overwhelmingly conservative. So that's like the weirdest part. Like the Labour Party, when they got voted in, they got a majority government, but something like 19% of the country voted. So only 19% of the country gave them the majority. Just so few people voted for the Tories because they were done, right? So I actually think that there's going to be a massive shift in the way that the government functions here very soon, because I think that I think democratically there's going to be a major shift in things coming soon.
Kind of like the Trump crackdown on immigration and the huge cultural shift that Trump's trying to put in effect to fight the liberal agenda in the United States. Kind of the same thing on the horizon for England. Can you deport like 7 million people? They relate. Like if anything, I mean, we can all agree that Trump is like a disruptor in chief, right? He's disrupting the status quo, and it sounds like that's what England needs at this point.
Oh, dude, that times 100 to be honest.
They're just afraid of being called racist. That's the problem. In England, if there's like a specific hate speech law that says, hey, it doesn't matter that you don't think somebody is racist, if the victim thinks it was racist or hate speech, it automatically is. It's the stupidest law. In America, the qualification in the law says if a reasonable person says it's hate speech, then maybe a jury would vote that because that's the condition they would have to follow. In England, it's no, it's the victim, which is the stupidest thing. I'm like, I know you guys are all sensitive. You had imperialism. You had your fucking empire. You lost it. But you can't have stupid laws like that. Canada also swung that way. Living in Canada, I can tell you that the hate speech laws lean a little bit in the direction of the UK. And because we're so close to the US, that the laws in the US make so much more sense. They just do. It's like, hey, a reasonable person, yeah, that sounds reasonable. But when you remove that condition from the law and you just start saying, hey, everybody can start saying that everything's racist, then that word loses meaning and you get evil trampling over innocent people.
Jarl says that Canada, in the chat, he says, we don't have hate speech laws, moron. That's what he said to what you're saying about Canada.
Unfortunately, we do. Yeah, unfortunately, we do. Yeah. I'll even put the reference in if you want.
Up to 5 years in prison.
Yeah. It's pretty strict, actually.
Yeah, just to quickly chime in, I must admit, I was kind of fascinated by the conversation vis-a-vis the grooming gangs and you, and I just wanted to, I presume that you is in the UK, but with the hate speech thing, right, as a European, we kind of get a little bit exasperated with you Americans seemingly thinking that you have an absolutist position on this, and that the American definition of free speech and hate speech is the definition of hate speech and free speech. And the telling thing about what you just said, Io, in what you just said is imperialism. But if we scratch that, in living memory, there was a genocidal war just fought in Europe. And one of the reasons why that war was fought was because of the hate speech spewed by the leader of Germany for some 12 years before that. So there is a heightened sense of sensitivity around it in Europe. And if you exclude that, then you don't understand the reason why so many European countries have laws around hate speech. Could they maybe be modified? Probably, right? But you've got to start from that position to understand it.
I agree. And if you compare the rape statistics of the year 2000 to the year 2023 and look at countries like Poland, UK, Germany, and France, I don't know what the fuck Poland is doing. I come from Poland. I'm a Polish Jew, so I agree with everything you're saying. Like, I don't tell Polish people that I'm a Jew because it makes the whole fucking conversation awkward. But yes, I agree that there's Very, very bad things have happened in Europe, even in recent memory, even in the collective memory of people. But there's something to be said about, hey, when children are being raped at a disproportionate level, then something needs to happen. Either the laws need to change or England needs to leave the treaty that says, hey, they're not going to deport people even if they're criminals. That's my contention. That there is a law, a provision. I'll give you the provision in a second, but if you can comment on that, that would be...
Okay. Well, I think you're slightly conflating two things. I don't claim to be any expert on the issue of the grooming gangs in the UK. I'm no expert, so that's a big caveat I'm throwing in at the start. But the vast majority of those grooming gangs and the heinous, disgusting grooming that was going on would be done by British citizens. So saying that we're going to deport them all, there was no legal basis to deport them from Britain to anywhere else. Has there been some isolated incidents of relatively recent migrants raping girls in the UK? Yes, but the vast majority of these grooming gangs, which has been going back for some 20 years, when I forget which newspaper first uncovered the systematic patterns that were happening in these northern towns, they're all of British citizens of a certain ethnicity, I will grant you that, and a certain ethnicity of a certain religion in a certain specific bit of a certain country. It really can be narrowed down, but they were British citizens.
Royfeld, before you were in the room, Ewan was talking about the those rape gangs and the grooming gangs, and he said he believed that the reason the government has enabled them for so long is that liberal politics have gotten to the point where they are more worried about being called racists than they are about protecting the safety of children. What do you say about that?
It's a more complex question than that. Again, I'm no expert on this, but the first time that this, again, disgusting crime kind of came to the public fore was about 20 years ago. I think it was the Times newspaper that first reported on it. There were lots of local newspapers that were reporting on it, but it was suppressed by some bits of local media, and then it didn't quite make the national media because of certain sensibilities, because the pattern around this was a certain ethnicity, of a certain religion, of a certain specific bit of a certain country, and people were
what is that?
some people were uncomfortable about that.
What is that? What is that population? Like the certain bit, what is that for those?
Muslims, Pakistani Muslims, I think.
Yeah, but it's more specific than that. They're from Kashmir. It's Kashmir.
Okay.
It's a specific region of Pakistan, and because of certain local community leaders, etc. These people initially, social workers were not prosecuting and going after these men in the way that they should have, because the girls were poor, and a lot of them were at first were not believed, but they're all of a certain socioeconomic type. There's every kind of prejudice you could put on the perpetrators and then also the victims was kind of assumed by various people in power, and it's terrible. But to say that the government, and I'm no fan of the British government, by the way, and Keir Starmer, and I'm definitely no fan of him, actually he did prosecute back in about 2010 numerous of these gangs when he was the director of public prosecutions. So we have to be slightly careful about government complicity and trying to push it underneath the carpet, because actually he didn't. However, this has been a rolling story for years, and it's terrible. There's no two ways about it. Girls were not believed because they were in care, they were poor, they were on drugs, all sorts, and people kind of pushed it underneath the carpet. That is the truth. That is the truth.
So, Royfield, I think that you are, I think you're correct. I think we have to be very careful about this. So first off, I would say that Keir Starmer was not complicit in any of this. and that he did prosecute people. But some of the other, like, sort of what you were talking about, first off, is I think what makes me the most upset, especially after like reading some of the, I guess like social workers' write-ups about this, is that they weren't calling them, victims of like underage child rape. They were calling them child prostitutes in the write-ups, which I think is disgusting. I think it's like crazy that was the normalized language. So they were like, the other thing too is that it's not Keir Starmer, who was head of CPS at the time, that I would say is responsible for covering this up. But there are people that are in government now that are responsible. There's evidence to direct it their way. I don't know if you know who, I can't remember his last name, but this guy named Raha, who was a criminal investigator who worked with MI5 for many years. He left and became an independent journalist uncovering specifically the grooming gangs. And what he came up with is that Angela Rayner, he has evidence that Angela Rayner actively covered it up. Andy Burnham, who's the mayor of Manchester. And then there's like a whole list of labor politicians. And he has evidence on all of them. And the government has refused to, because they would essentially be investigating themselves, right? So, like, what do you do in that sort of case?
My massive caveat in this, and I said it at the start, is I'm no expert in this, and you seem to know more about the detail. One person's cover-up is another person's just benign neglect of an issue. But this, both sides of this can be true at once, in that this thing has gone on for 20 years, and every 3 months there is a case, and you just insert another British town where taxi drivers, in effect, have created this grooming gang. It's always around kind of taxi drivers as well. And on the other hand, it can be true also that actually we've been talking about this for 20 years, almost 20 years. So cover-up isn't quite the right expression.
There's been no national investigation into this, and they've traced 85 towns and cities now with an independent investigation that just released documents like yesterday. So I would say it is covered up. It hasn't been investigated.
Well, again, I defer to your wisdom on this, but the very fact that the first case got to the national press in about 2007 or something or another, and people were prosecuted back in 2010, says to me slightly otherwise. But I take your point about a joined-up investigation that looks at the national-wide patterns of this and who was where when these cases came to their desk, and people were prosecuted, but the systematic failure of social services, but also the police on the ground when the first complaints were made in various cities, and what we can learn from that. All right, so I think the two opposite things can be true. It's not exactly a cover-up. However, there are things that we can learn and we should learn, and maybe a nationwide investigation which looks at all instances, will pour some light onto this disgusting episode.
Good morning, guys.
This is content serendipity. We're creating content. Good for us.
Good morning, Holly.
I'm listening. But man, I don't know, guys. I don't know where to go. I feel like, are we safe anywhere anymore? I don't know. Sometimes. Is America, should we all just get the fuck out of here?
Well, you're safer from sexual crimes in America than you are in England, and you're safer from gun crimes in England than you are in America.
Well, I'd rather be raped than my children be killed at their school. I'll say that.
Oh, well then America's perfect for you. No, I'm sorry. England's perfect for you. Backwards. Backwards. You need to move to England.
I know that's fucked up, but I'm for real.
These are the questions now, right? Like, where do I want to live? Do I want to get raped, or do I want my kids to get killed in school?
You know, it's crazy because the little girl who was like, hey, stay away from my sister. She's only 12. She got arrested. Not the guy who was calling them sexy, but the girl who was like, yo, stay away from me. So it's weird that we're taking those kind of priorities. Like, I want to ask really hard questions, but it's like, hey, there's a lot of details there. The parents of the girl are saying one story. The news is saying another. The UK government is saying a different story than the people who are from that culture are saying, no, it's not a migrant issue. It's a definition of the word rape. When a little girl feels that she has to swing an axe and a knife, I don't care what your beliefs are. Something is wrong. Fucking fix it.
That's exactly what Ewan said earlier.
Did something new happen in the UK that I may have missed that brought this conversation?
Yeah, little Scottish girl. If you just look up Scottish girl knife.
It started, as a recap, it started because Ewan was talking about living in England, and we had somebody from Georgia talking about wanting to live in England, and Ewan was saying, you don't want to live in England, it's a disaster. And then he started giving details about the rape groups and things like that, and a lot of us didn't know about that, and so we got really in depth to it. We started looking up, doing some research, and we found that England is...
What happened with the Scottish person with the knife? The Scottish girl?
Yeah, so just from what I know, and if somebody knows more, then please correct me. But a little Scottish girl with her sister walking on the street, her sister gets approached by this migrant, and he's kind of trying to, I don't know, engage them in some way, talk to them that they're sexy or whatever. And supposedly, what happened was that this is not the first time that this has happened, and so they're much more vigilant about protecting themselves. And so you have something like, hey, the girl whips out a knife, like draws like a little axe. It looks like medieval and stuff, but she pulls it out and says, like, stand back, my sister's only 12. Leave her alone, kind of thing. And then the guy keeps going, and really don't know what happened after that. The kind of video cuts off. Apparently, one of the girls ended up in the hospital, according to some reports. Now, it would have to be confirmed, but that's kind of like rad, that there is this, hey, migrants take priority because we can't be racist. Seems to be the story. I'd like to be wrong. And
I don't think, listen, I'm going to check out of this conversation because I fully appreciate that. You know, there's no two ways about it. This terrible grooming gangs thing did happen in the UK. Is probably still happening somewhere. We need a root and branch torchlight on it as to the reasons why things got so bad. But, you know, if the conversation started with don't go live in Britain because you're going to get raped, you know, it's like, come on now, right? And, you know, I'm proud to say that I come from somewhere which has free universal healthcare, right? Which has, and for somebody who, I loved my time in California, lived there for 9 years, I think we have a better work-life balance than in America. We have a low overall cost of living. You know, I could go on. America's a wonderful place, right? But if the conversation started, well, you know, you're going to get shot in America or you're going to get raped in Britain. You know, it's like, you know, we should all be a little bit more adult and a little bit more nuanced with our conversations. And again, I am not saying that Britain is perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But anyway, yeah, thank you for indulging me and letting me on the stage.
The conversation didn't start that way. That was my sarcastic commentary 3 minutes ago.
All right, Mike.
The conversation started by Ewan giving us actual facts about what's going on over in England, which sounds pretty fucking messed up because we pulled up some statistics and saw that the UK is the top of the entire world of countries for amount of sex crimes. And it used to, It used to be sweetened. The UK is doubled sweetened in the last little bit of time. So it seems like it is a very serious problem. And, whether or not we want to talk about it, it has political implications based on the liberal politics that have allowed, apparently, it sounds like a government to largely turn its nose to some serious issues because of the political implications of being called racist, which I think is a fascinating concept because the United States was kind of heading that direction. And Trump disrupted a lot of that by saying, you know what, our liberal politics are going a little bit too far. We can't have men and women's sports. We can't focus on transgender issues as a number one priority. And, not every white person is racist when they call out statistics.
Hey, Royfield, question for you. Are these the rape gangs, are they happening in Ireland? I feel like I don't hear about it there.
I have no idea. Ireland's another country. I couldn't comment on Irish politics at all. I don't know.
All right,
I have no idea.
Never mind. But for the stage then, because the reason I ask is I was there recently for a couple weeks, and I had been there 20 years prior, almost 15, 20, and I don't recall it being near as multicultural as when I saw it, and mostly when I was there, very heavy Muslim population seemed to be walking around in various cities across my time there, and I was just curious if that was happening there because it doesn't seem like they have these problems there, and wondering why.
I'll just quickly ask you, Holly, then I'm going to bounce out of the room. Immigration into Ireland is a relatively recent phenomenon. So if you look at the mass migration of people from the island of Ireland, it's the potato famine in the 1840s, and Ireland has been a net exporter of people ever since. The population of Ireland, this is kind of from memory, so don't exactly quote me on this, but the overall direction of what I'm about to say is going to be true. The population of the island of Ireland in 1800 was about 6 million, and the rest of the United Kingdom was, I think, something like 10, something like that. The population of the island of Ireland is now 6 million, still 180 years later, whilst the population of the rest of the UK is 65 million. It shows you how much people left Ireland because of the potato famine in the 1840s. So hence you have the massive Irish population in Canada, in America, in places like Philadelphia, Boston, etc., Chicago, also in Australia. So all the way until the late 1990s, people left Ireland. If you were young and you had a family, you left Ireland, primarily actually to the UK. So my home city of Birmingham, massive Irish population, so much so that you don't even think about it. But 30% of the white folks in Birmingham, my hometown, Irish descent. So the reason why I mention all that is when I went to Ireland, purely anecdotally, in 1996 for the first time, I was literally stopped in the street because I was black, because you just didn't see non-white migrants in Ireland. Since accession to the EU and with the Irish economy doing really well, in the early 2000s, you got lots of European migrants to places like Dublin and non-white Irish folks, non-white immigrants, going to Ireland. So now we are seeing first and second generation non-white Irish people, and it is incredibly common to go to somewhere like Cork or Limerick and see somebody who is black or brown who has an Irish accent and will call themselves Irish. It's a relatively recent thing, unlike in the UK, where there has been black and brown English people since the 1940s in significant numbers. There always were some before in places like London, but in terms of the mass wave of migration to the UK, so in the last census, 18% of people in the United Kingdom are non-white, and that fundamentally stems from 1948. Ireland is much more recent.
Thank you. Ewan, did you want to chime in on?
Oh yeah, I was going to agree with Royfield. I think like what's going on in Ireland right now, from what I've seen, is that because Ireland is still part of the EU, like the Republic of Ireland is still part of the EU. They still go by like EU law and stuff like that. So again, a lot of the migration there has been much more recent. But I mean, this is the other thing too, is that some of the issues in Ireland that have been arising has been illegal migration because they're a part of the EU and they have to run by the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights laws. There have been issues where they've been setting up these like huge migrant camps like all over Ireland. There have been like towns where illegal immigrants have been put in, and there's more of them than the actual population of the town. It's an incredibly tiny island. It's even smaller than the UK. And they've seen a massive influx very quickly of immigration. And some of it good, some of it bad. That's just the reality of it. I mean, with places like Scotland, for example, with the grooming gangs, things had not been investigated in Scotland previously, for example, but now that things are being investigated, it's starting to turn up that there are still active grooming gangs in Scotland. So, I mean, it's like incredibly complex what's going on here. But part of it is the fact that we don't have statistics because the government hasn't investigated yet. We don't have police reports because the police never reported on it. So that's kind of the issue that the UK is facing also, is that we don't know the full extent of all of this. There's independent investigations into the grooming gangs going on in the UK. There's one that just got released, I think, yesterday or 2 days ago, that you can, choose to believe or not. But the government has essentially been forced into a national investigation into the grooming gangs because something called the Casey report came out, highlighting the importance of doing a national investigation as it has been actively covered up.
So do you think that Ireland and Scotland could end up going down the road that Britain finds themselves in? Or do you think that they will?
Yeah, I mean, Scotland is part of the UK, right? So same laws, same national government. Essentially, they do have sort of a separate government, but it's still essentially it's Westminster that still can call the shots. So yeah, I mean, I think it's starting to happen out there. I think that we're starting to see a lot of like migration happening in Scotland, but I mean, like England, it's been happening for years in like sort of the main cities, the towns like Glasgow, Edinburgh. Dundee is the one, the town where the girl with the axe and the knife. That's where that viral video comes from. But yeah, I mean, it's so complex. But I think the part that makes it the most complex is the fact that we haven't had proper investigations into this yet, and essentially what the British people are the most upset about isn't the acts themselves. It's the actual cover-up from the government to police to even the caretakers that were supposed to look after these girls. I think that is what the British people or people in the UK are like the most angry about, is the active cover-up, and still being covered up in ways, and it's still active. There's still active grooming gangs going on, even though it's probably one of the number one things talked about in this country. So yeah, it's a really, really dark, sad situation going on here.
Do you think like Ireland, not Northern Ireland, but Ireland that's not, under UK rule, can they curb this before it becomes like? Do they have more autonomy? I guess I know they're influenced a lot by Britain. I don't know how much. Like can they be spared?
No. No. So Northern Ireland is under UK law, and they are actively actually moving migrants to Northern Ireland. I know that there was recently a huge riot where they burnt down 3 houses in Ballymena because a were underage too. They were all underage. But this is the thing, is that it's not like really focused on race or anything like that. The girl who got raped was a mixed ethnic, like half African, half Irish girl. I think the locals care about the Irish, and they're worried about what's happening to specifically underage girls. And about the Irish, it's a little bit different from the English culturally, is that the Irish actually go out and riot much more than the English do. I think the English are a little bit more passive with this stuff. So yeah, you saw huge amounts of violence when that riot happened. And yeah, I mean, I would say that the entirety of the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland is all in like a really weird state right now. I mean, the other thing that's interesting in Ireland that I could highlight is that the Catholics and the Protestants have actually been joining in marches together to defend against this like governmental migration habits that they're bringing all these people in. So seeing these people who would have been murdering each other and fighting each other in the streets 30 years ago joining in marches is pretty wild, because if you lived in Ireland, that would not normally be the case.
Wow, that's really interesting. I mean, every time there's a school shooting in the States, I go down the rabbit hole of like dreaming about leaving. And Ireland right now is like probably top of my list, but then there's this. So I don't know. There's always something that makes me think twice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really sad state of affairs here. I mean, this is the thing, is that I could get a work visa out in the U.S. and just move my family out there. I live in the U.K. And that's what I think we're going to have to do, to be honest. I think that the U.S., because of the way that your culture functions, I think that because of your constitution, I don't think that it's possible for what's happening here to happen in the U.S. But with that being said, you guys have to be like really, you have to pay attention to this, because I think that this is something that very could easily happen to you guys out there. I think there's little rumbles starting, and I feel like the UK is generally about 10 years ahead with social movements, whether it's people that we agree with or disagree with. So I would say you guys got to pay attention to what's going on in the UK, because it very likely could happen in the US as well. I think that you guys are safer because of your constitution and safety that it derives. But with that being said, I don't know. I'm severely worried about you guys too.
What is it about the Constitution that you think makes a difference in this matter?
The Second Amendment.
So specifically what you're saying is...
Actually, sorry, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment together. Yeah, because free speech in the UK is gone.
Are you saying we're safer because we have guns?
I mean, yes, partially, but also the First Amendment, you have it in your Constitution, free speech. We don't have free speech here. This is the problem, is that people that speak out about this get imprisoned all the time. They're in this country, in the UK, last year there were over 12,000 people arrested, put in jail for social media posts.
I thought you also said that there are demonstrations every day about this.
Of course, yeah. People are still allowed to protest. But you have to understand how people are freaking out. Yeah, but I mean, there's people being arrested left and right over this stuff too. There's lots of people being arrested during these demonstrations. There was a guy who yelled at a police officer last year during the Southport. Part of it was a riot, but this guy wasn't at a riot. He was at a protest, and he yelled at a police officer about it. This is the guy, Axel Ruda Cabana, who murdered 3 girls in cold blood at a Taylor Swift dance party thing, and it's like a horrible story. police officer.
Wait, hang on.
And he got arrested.
For the Taylor Swift concert?
No, at the Taylor Swift dance party. It was like a little neighborhood thing. Multiple, I think 8 girls got stabbed, 3 were murdered. He almost beheaded one of the girls. They were like under the age of 10. Axel Rita Cabana.
Who is that?
He is a Welsh choir boy from Rwanda. But that's how the government portrayed him as. They called him a Welsh choir boy and murders 3 girls. That's how all the news stories portrayed it. And then when his picture came out, because he became 18 right afterwards, everybody's like, yeah, Welsh choir boy. And just look his name up, you'll see. You'll see the picture of him. But there's a guy, I mean, this is just one example of many, who he yelled at a police officer, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison just for yelling at a police officer during a protest. And he ended up killing himself in prison because he had health conditions, all sorts of, heart problems.
Was that fellow who was the killer, was he born in England or in UK?
I believe that he was born in Wales, but he was the son of 2 Rwandan refugees.
So he's Welsh if he's born in Wales, right?
Yeah, of course. He's a Welshman.
Are you being ironic?
Sort of. But yeah, technically he's a Welshman, sure. I wouldn't say he's ethnically a Welshman. But, his background is Rwandan, but...
You mean his parents are Rwanda?
Wait, do you think that... Wait, are you saying that a Welsh person... Wait, so if I went to Rwanda... No, do you know what? If I went to China, and I had a child there with my wife, who were both not Chinese, would you say that I have a Chinese child?
I cannot speak to China. I can speak to America because I'm American.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? America is a bit different because America is like a few hundred years old, and I actually think that, becoming an American is actually like a really great thing. But, I mean, like the English and the Welsh and the Scots have like a, 2,000-year history. So, I mean, it would be sort of like in the, I would say British. I would say that he was a British man, yeah. I wouldn't say he's necessarily ethnically Welsh, though.
I don't know what ethnically Welsh is.
Well, they have a huge history that spans thousands of years. You can look up Wales.
I understand that. But you seem to be resentful, basically, that they called a black guy Welsh because he was black.
No, they called him a Welsh choir boy. They called him a Welsh choir boy in the days, which is bizarre.
Well, they were being ironic. And
after killing 3 girls and stabbing 8 others.
It's meant to be lurid. It's meant to be tabloid.
Okay, he's going to be our national news presenter and be a tabloid, then I don't think that they should be getting public funding then.
Why?
If they're going to be a tabloid, fine. Be a tabloid, do what you want. But if they're going to actually try to provide accurate coverage of the situation, then I would say that they probably shouldn't be getting national funding.
I don't know. There's BBC gets national funding, the rest don't. I mean, it's a.
Look, they were trying to minimize public anger. Okay, that is what
they
happened.
They showed the picture of him, right?
It took them 3 months to put the picture up.
So the day after this happened, it's because he's a kid?
No. Nobody knew what he looked like. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody knew anything for months.
Because he was a minor?
Yeah, he was 17. He turned 18 literally like a week after the...
Was that the reason why they didn't show the picture? Because he's a minor?
No, I think that they specifically didn't show the picture because of the public backlash, which did happen, which I don't agree with. I don't think that you should go out and riot in a horrible situation like that. I'm totally against that.
I think what Ewan is pointing to is a trend with the media, and that happens in our country also. In fact, it did yesterday with the school shooter yesterday, where the media will lie by omission when the narrative doesn't fit what they want the narrative to be. So,
I mean, it took about 5 minutes for me to find out that he was a transgender person.
Yeah, but look at CNN, the New York Times, all their stories yesterday, they weren't talking about that at all. The other trans shoot.
No, that it wasn't even a day. It wasn't even an hour. And we got the manifesto.
Okay, so there was another shooter who was, this whole thing about every time there is a shooter and the left tries to say, oh, it was a right-wing nut, and the right tries to say, oh, it was a left-wing nut, that needs to end, because it's clearly more nuanced and complicated than that, and they're just mental people, but so it doesn't need to be a political football. But when you are a media editor, you should be posing to your reporters and your journalists, what are the natural questions that your viewer or reader are going to ask? And if you're leaving out things like, by the way, there's a huge meta trend that first-generation immigrants to England are exponentially more likely to commit crimes against persons. And by the way, you fail to mention that in the story, but if the perpetrator was white, that's in the headline every single time. Then while you may not be directly purporting a lie, you're certainly crafting the narrative to fit the pre-existing narrative that you want to put out.
Thank you, Deriza. Yeah, specifically that. He eloquently said my exact thoughts.
It's important that the person is transgender. It's interesting if it's important, or again, I don't know if it's important that the guy was black, is black.
I mean, maybe it is. Maybe they're taking drugs that disrupt the natural endocrine systems in a person's body, and that affects more than just their physiology, and affects their psychology.
Well, I was on a call, but even the call, for the rest of the room, I do want to clarify this as well. Part of the reason why it was important that we found out that he was the son of Rwandan refugees is the fact that he had been, we have an anti-terrorist group, and this is the failure of the UK government. It's called PREVENT. It's an anti-terrorism task force that investigates people to try to stop things like this from happening. He was referred to PREVENT 3 times before he did this mass stabbing of little girls, a Taylor Swift dance party thing. And in his writings, when he was in high school, he talked about how the Rwandan genocide should have never happened, and that the genocide should have been here. He said that multiple times. This is something this kid got sent to PREVENT 3 times and refused to investigate it, and then he goes to a party with children and he murders 3 of them and nearly beheads one of them. To me, come on. This is important stuff to talk about. The fact that the government failed so miserably in their basic duty of care to look after these girls whose lives are, they're either dead, or the girls who got stabbed whose lives are forever changed. This is basic stuff.
Ewan, I don't know if you guys talked about this before I got here, but I don't think most people in America know what the grooming gangs are in the UK and in Europe. I certainly didn't until you and I actually talked about it at one point.
It's starting to be talked about. I mean, I've been noticing, I listen to a lot of U.S. news and stuff like that. I like to pay attention to what's going on in the U.S. And I've been seeing, I think even Fox News talked about it. But I'm starting to see a major shift of Americans starting to look in our direction. And I know it's not everyone. I know that there's a lot of people that still need to be sort of educated on it. But I really, really think that the microscope is starting to be put on the UK here. And it's really important that people do look into this, and you tell your friends and you tell your family about it, because it's really scary stuff. It's not the amount of violence that's going on here. It's not just the amount of sexual assaults or things like that, the rates of it that have gone through the roof in the past few years. It's also the fact that the government is trying to put people who speak out about it in prison any chance they get. So it's a really scary time here, and this is why I want to get the fuck out of this country.
Yeah, and the only reason I said earlier, Darius, if you weren't here, I had noted while Ewan was talking, the only reason why I know about it is because, I spend an unhealthy amount of time on Twitter. And there are a lot, there are a lot of accounts of people, UK-based people, Londoners, British folks, families who are directly impacted, families who film their family members being arrested for, either protesting against the groomer gang, speaking out, being directly impacted because of loved ones. And not only that, you have a lot of people documenting what they call the two-tiered police system, where you have a lot of natural-born citizens being arrested for just doing something as praying in public. You can't pray in public in some of these areas, according to testimonies being shared. Also being arrested for things you post on social media. If you just speak out about, if you have a reaction to the groomer gangs or this massive influx of migrants, they're being arrested for taking to social media and using certain words. And seemingly these words aren't offensive, but the government has decided the citizens are not allowed to react. You got to be very careful. They police the language very heavily over there, seemingly. So you're right. The mainstream media isn't really covering this. You have to follow, kind of social media accounts, be on certain platforms, follow alternative news to really get the tea about what's going on, and it's very disturbing.
I kind of felt that hesitation in Royfeld when he was here. Like,
Yes.
he really wouldn't go there. It was super awkward because he acknowledged that it existed, but he wouldn't go anything deeper than that. And then he chose to leave the room when it started getting real specific. It was really awkward. I really felt like the blanket of censorship on the way that he responded emotionally and the things he said. Like, he was like sitting up, being careful about every word. It was really weird. It sounded like talking to somebody from Saudi Arabia about women's rights or something. Like, it was awkward.
See, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I was really paying attention to the Royfield reaction as well. And I adore you, but it made me think well, maybe this is specific to maybe it's just really bad in the region where Ewan's at, but it's not really considered a common thought process by a lot, because Royfield almost felt like he was being attacked, the UK was being attacked.
He's black.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, you're saying that he felt like the UK was being attacked. I would say he felt more like black people were being attacked. And I think that if there was any defensive tone in his voice, it was probably because he felt like, hey, it's not all black people. I don't think that he was defensive as a British man. I think he was defensive as a black man.
Well, but no, Nye had already had that conversation and addressed the room that she was talking specifically about Muslims.
I could sort of explain it to you because it's actually not a skin color thing. I think that he's actually just much more left wing, and I think that there's essentially, just like the US, a major culture war that's going on in the UK as well. And it's by any means necessary, we need to win. So a lot of people on the left aren't willing to actually address the grooming gang situation, and they are the type of people that would actively cover up the victims of this stuff. I'm not saying he would. I'm not for that. I'm definitely not putting those words in his mouth, by the way. But in that case, I have seen tons of videos, and I know black men personally who would probably stand with the flag wavers, waving the English flag, because that is their culture. That's what they were raised in, and they don't want girls in their communities to be attacked like this. So, it's not really a racial thing. It's more of a political differences thing.
Can I jump in for just a quick sec? I love Royfield's a great guy. I don't mean to disparage him in any way, but I think his hesitance and reluctance to address the issue head on is it illustrates actually the same themes and patterns that were discovered in the inquiry that was done in the grooming gangs cover up, and that the main one being that it's not always people. I think this is what's hard to accept, is that a lot of the worst things happen with from people who are the best intentioned. So it's not people like actively trying to cover things up, but there's a comfort, particularly among those who are on the political left, with acknowledging ugly stuff especially when it really. I do think it actually does involve race, but not in the way that was suggested by my friend. I think the way it involves race is anytime there are patterns that emerge, people particularly on the left, are extremely uncomfortable with acknowledging it. And I just want to really quickly read some of the key findings from the report from that grooming gang. And if I go on too long, just cut me off and tell me to shut up. But the audit exposed systemic, long-standing institutional failures in safeguarding children, turning a blind eye to abuse rather than intervening. There is persistent reluctance to record or confront the ethnicity of perpetrators. In fact, data on it was often omitted or obscured due to fears of being labeled racist or inflaming tensions. Local data, where available, indicated a significant overrepresentation of suspects from Asian and Pakistani backgrounds, but this was ignored or downplayed at the national level because the data collection systems were weak and incomplete. And so I think that's the main issue here, and I think that's where we see some of that from our speaker who left the room.
Gotcha.
And that's the Casey report. That's the report that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Where it's the report that dragged essentially our current government kicking and screaming to do a national investigation finally after they had said no to 2 previous ones.
And Ewan, I commented in the chat on the knife girl. I know we're talking about 2 different places. Grooming gangs primarily being the UK and the knife whirling girl in Dundee, Scotland. My only point about that, Ewan, is I did a little bit of digging into it, and it looks like the guy who's recording the video, who's allegedly this migrant who's going after young girls, he was with his wife at the time. Apparently, reports are he was the one doing the recording. In my experience, the guys going around scouting, cruising for young girls usually aren't the ones who are pulling out their phones and recording. All I was saying there is that story and that image of that girl holding the knife went so viral so fast. Everyone superimposed their narrative that they wanted to be true on her, by the way, including myself initially. And I just think it's important to peel one layer back of the onion before we go too crazy with each story, because if we do that, it actually risks, and the facts turn out to be different, it actually risks undermining the real legitimate issues like the grooming gang story that we're discussing.
AJ, okay, so respectfully, I agree with you pretty much entirely. I agree that we have to wait for more information to come out with this, but there are 2 different sides going on at the same time, right? So I did do digging as well.
Yeah, 2 stories for sure.
And so one of the girls' moms made a statement out to people saying that there was actually 3 girls involved. That man did go up to one of them and like sexually touched her or came on to her or something. Yeah, and this is like the mom's statement or whatever. And that this had happened to them multiple times, hence why the girl was carrying the weapons. And that the 3rd girl actually had gone to call the police. And that's why she's not in the video. But there were 3 girls involved in the entirety of it. Okay. And the girl who did have the knife and axe actually ended up in the hospital with a concussion and a major bump on her head because the guy physically attacked her.
Interesting.
But there's a hospital report that comes out.
No, sorry. And by the way, I'm not challenging it. I'm not challenging it. I actually don't have my mind made up on the story. So that's interesting. I didn't know that information. Thanks for sharing that. But I think you and I would both agree that Most people are not doing the digging you and I are doing on this, and they see that knife out and they get really excited because it's like a great way to advance the narrative. And I just worry about that sometimes because it can actually end up undermining. But in this case, it might just be the case. I didn't have those facts, so thanks.
Yeah, I think having the facts is. Oh, sorry, you go, Sarah.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that is one thing that Republicans tend to be really bad about, more so than Democrats, is we don't necessarily get all the facts before we express our fake outrage, you know. And so I do. I just wanted to know. I think that's an important point because I see it way more so in the Republican Party than I do the Democrat.
Yeah, I just wanted to say as well with the girl with the knife and the axe. I think like part of the reason it went so viral in the UK because everybody in the UK is obviously talking about it too. And there's like people that stream and talk about politics here that I listen to and follow. I think the reason why it went so viral is the fact that the overall message that little girls are carrying around knives and axes to protect themselves because the police won't do anything for them is sort of the overall message that's being spread. That's like the issue at hand, is that they don't feel safe, especially working class girls. If they're coming from working class backgrounds, they don't feel safe because the police will not respond to their pleas for help. And that's like what made everybody in the UK just like livid at that story.
Well, and honestly, this was just a tactic to shut Jarl down in the chat, which it did work because it appears as though he has left our presence. But he made the statement in chat that the murderers way more children than being raped in the UK. And just out of curiosity, because I enjoy challenging Jarl, I looked up the statistics, and the 2021 statistics for U.S. children murdered was just under 2,000. I think it was 1,750 or something. If I'm being liberal with that number, and I say, let's say on average, 2,000 children a year are murdered in the U.S., the statistics on rape in the UK for minors is 60,000 over the course of I think 5 years. So even if I said that same 5-year period, 10,000 U.S. children murdered, he was grossly wrong. So I think that says.
I'm seeing a trend about him being grossly wrong. Statistics. I'm sorry.
He's grossly wrong per capita.
Yes, per capita.
Per capita.
Of course, the ones that apparently don't understand what per capita means, but he's grossly wrong on it.
Yeah, Jarl was proven wrong a little bit left and right this morning, earlier in the room. He came up and wanted to be spicy.
It was pretty scathing, actually. I was like, damn.
I think his argument style is just to rouse the other side and not actually make a salient point.
Well, what cracks me up is how once he's proven incorrect, how he moves the bar like so belligerently.
Right.
Like America's 5 times worse than Canada, and then it's like no, it's 2. It looks like it's 1.8 times. Yeah, that's double. Double is horrible. It's like wait a second. Right. Will you please acknowledge that you doubled the double already?
It's exactly what I said. Just meant to frustrate you.
Oh, it works. That's why I just shut up.
I think what I wish the Roadfields of the world would understand is by continuing to refuse to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is mainly there are significant cultural issues at play here. You're actually going to make life way worse for these Indians in Pakistan. I mean, look at me, right? Like for people who look like me. And there is a way of addressing this issue head on that can be done in a reasonable way that acknowledges, oh, it's not all brown people, right? But there are some serious cultural issues at play here that we have to tackle and figure out how to address, and we're not afraid of calling it out. And if you don't do that, then the only people who are going to do it are going to be people who aren't going to handle it reasonably. They're going to be the people who aren't afraid of being called racist. And I don't think you want those people making the policy. So you neglect this issue at your peril.
Yeah, no, totally valid point. I mean, my next door neighbor here, him and his wife, they're basically fresh off the boat from Pakistan, and we get along great. You know, we have chats all the time. I would never judge all Pakistanis for what has happened with the grooming gangs in the UK. I think it's really important to focus on the actual issue at hand, which is that this specific group of them should all be prosecuted and deported and sent to prison and, you know, punished and I would say publicly flogged at this point. But that wouldn't change my view of my neighbor, you know? It's like, obviously I would never think that way. So I mean, you gotta have a cool head with this stuff. You can't just generalize everyone in these cases. And I mean, this is the problem with people like the woke leftists, is that they generalize all white people, right? So you can't. That's the problem. That's the specific problem at hand. You can't call everybody the same thing if they come from the same background. You can't call all Pakistanis in the UK groomers, because that's just not the case. But you have to at least call out that group. And most importantly, I think that what the people in the UK are angriest about, and I think that this is being misunderstood or purposefully, put in the media, is that I don't think the ethnically English people are angry at the Pakistanis. I think they're angry at the government for actively covering this up for so long. That's the anger.
I mean, I think it's the good old saying of if you import to the third world, you become the third world. And it's not that Pakistani, it's not like everyone who's from Pakistan are bad people, but again, it's what country are you coming from? What type of culture have you guys created there? And, in Pakistan, they have a culture where, rape is okay for the most part. It's highly accepted.
But Alex, I think that in this case, I disagree. So I think that what has gone wrong in this specific instance is the fact that the police did not enforce the law. They did not arrest these men and prosecute them for pedophilia on mass amounts of children. They actively covered it up. That is the problem at hand, specifically with the Pakistan grooming gangs in the UK.
But by the way, I just real quick, I think a part of this was also that we don't often mention is I think, even tell me if you disagree, but one less spoken about aspect of this is that a lot of these white younger girls were from lower classes, and there was some interactions with police that seemed to signal that they kind of didn't give a fuck about them, because they're like, what are you doing out there at night doing this anyways, and essentially slut shaming them a little bit, and because there were so there's many layers to this story. There's also combined with fears of being labeled racism and inflaming racial tensions if it got out, if they actually arrested these guys and went forward with it, and the stories got out that there are these brown guys going around raping white girls, what that would do in the community. There's a lot going on that caused this cover up, and all of it is terrible.
Yeah, I did want to make a quick point, because AJ, you're 100% right, and I forgot to bring this point up earlier, is that as an outsider living in the UK, watching, how everybody behaves around me and stuff like that, I feel like there's a distinct disdain for the English working class here, with specifically the middle class and the upper middle class and stuff like that, where they really look down on these people. And I've heard people make these quips and here and there, like all the time, about working class people in this country. And that's the other issue too, is that there's a very definitive class system. Like for me, being from Canada, it's like my neighbor was like, you know, blue collar, and I came from like a more white collar family, and like, you know, the working class versus like the middle class all sort of like combined, and like we never really like, the class wasn't a huge thing. I mean, obviously in every country it's still there a little bit, but in the UK it's very distinct. And I think that a huge issue with the grooming gangs is the fact that most of the victims were working class girls. So yeah, 100% correct on.
Apparently they were working class from troubled backgrounds who were perhaps already in the social services system, perhaps missing one parent or even both parents, also possibly with drug problems and so forth. I'm reading about this now. And they seem to have first been given drugs and alcohol, and I guess that's the grooming process, and then eventually abused in a sexual manner. But yeah,
100%. Yeah, you're 100%.
I take your point, Elena. I see some of the comments in the chat voicing some frustration about the cultural component of this, because I think if we're being honest with ourselves, it's not just make sure to prosecute. There's another issue here, and it's something that is very difficult to grapple with. I don't know what the answer is, because I don't think immigration is going away anytime soon. I mean, I'm an immigrant, okay? And in where I live, there's been, for example, a massive, giant influx of Indian immigrants who, for the most part, are law-abiding, hardworking people. Okay, I have nothing but great things to say. However, there are some cultural issues that are starting to become apparent. There is, for example, a nude beach that I frequent and that I've been going for years, and there are rules there.
Oh, I don't mean to dox you. You're in Canada, right?
That's right. Yeah. So
I'm from Canada. I know all about that nude beach.
Okay, so in recent years, I'm sure you've seen this yourself. There are groups, like big groups, of Indian men who come down to this nude beach, fully clothed. Okay, they don't even have a beach blanket, which signals to me they're not there to sit down and have a good time at the beach. And they do walkthroughs. So that they can, and then they stare, like totally without shame, just staring at the women. I've had to confront these men, sometimes while in the nude, and it's made for a funny scene, and tell them to put their phones away, stop taking photos, stop looking at these women. And women have come up to me, with me and my wife, while we're there, thanking us for intervening. It's getting really bad, and part of it's like not even their fault. Like they're just from a completely different world. Like imagine you come from a world like that, and then you walk into a beach and there's like all these nude women just laying around. It would fucking blow your mind. So a part of me doesn't even blame them for staring, but at the same time, we've got to figure out as a society, how do we grapple with these significant cultural differences and issues? And step one is acknowledging that they exist.
I mean, I think, but I do, AJ, I think where things go off and where things go wrong is that I think that every country has, to a certain extent, a certain native culture. And I think that it's really important that that culture's laws and, it's important to enforce that stuff, right? We need to just kind of put our foot down and be like, that's just not how you do this here.
Yeah, and I think
you just explain.
And I think the biggest hurdle to that is that this obsession with look, when my family immigrated here, we assimilated, and we were proud to assimilate. And it didn't mean that we have to abandon every aspect of our culture and language. We didn't. I still speak Farsi and Persian. But we understood that when you come into somebody's house and the rules of the house are you take your shoes off. That's what you do. And we're very grateful, very lucky to be here. And we're very happy to do that. So when that starts going away because there's some new ideology that's, well, no, there's no longer going to be shared unified values, custom norms. It's just everything goes because it's a beautiful multicultural place. I mean, that's chaos. So I don't know how to deal with this. Like, part of me is like, should there be training sessions at the airport when people come in?
No, I mean,
letting them know, like, this is.
I would say this, AJ. I actually think that all you need to do to fix the situation is, I mean, in the UK, for example, is just end, for example, this is like a big one that could probably fix most of the problems, is end welfare for foreign nationals. Like, we're putting billions of dollars into, like, welfare for people who are coming here and going on welfare, which is crazy to me. You should be bringing in people that add to your economy, not people that become a net drain on your economy, right? So you close all those loopholes, and you fixed probably about 80% of the entire problem right there.
Yeah, and I'm also, a part of me is also wondering if the class of immigrant has changed in recent years. By the way, even amongst my own people, I've noticed a difference. I've noticed a trend in terms of the type of Iranian who comes into Canada. It seems to be of a lower class element that didn't exist before. It used to be harder to get into the country. Like, you used to have to meet certain thresholds and hurdles to get in. And I'm thinking, is this a post-COVID thing where all of these Western countries, to make up for the labor shortages, just pumped their countries full of immigrants, and in so doing, brought in a different class of immigrant. In other words, low-skilled labor, essentially. And I think that might be part of it too. Something has shifted, and I'm including my group in that just so people don't think I'm trying to target any other group, in the immigration policy in that respect as well.
Yeah, no, AJ, I think you're correct. I think it's like Canada used to have, like, in my opinion, the best immigration system in the world, and Trudeau essentially changed the entire immigration system and allowed for loopholes. For example, like, you know, the student visa situation where there were 400,000, or no, I think it was even higher. It's like 800,000 students or something like that came to Canada in 1 year, and they were all for sham colleges, so they weren't even coming to get a degree. They were coming to work at Tim Hortons and work at, like, you know, low-wage jobs, which in their case they were making so much more money than where they would have made.
And Ewan, not to talk over you, but when you talk about those kind of immigration figures into Canada, you have to mention the total population of Canada, because, you know, most Americans are surprised at how relatively small the population of Canada is. It's, you know, for reference, I don't know, it's like, I don't know, maybe this total population of the size of, like, the New York and Boston region combined, and that's about it.
And by the way,
tiny population compared to
sorry to the room for, I have not at all wanted to shift the conversation to Canada. I know how much Americans hate talking about Canada and other countries, but I was using it as an illustration for what I see be a cultural clash that I see everywhere. For the people in the chat who are saying every man stares, you just don't understand what the norms are at this particular beach that I'm talking about, because you're not there. When you have this picture, a pack of 9 to 12 men fully clothed in jeans and long sleeves, walking up to your blanket as you lay there nude and just gawking at you. It's absolutely unheard of at this beach, and it's a massive problem. And it requires guys like me to unfortunately have to get up and police it to keep it under control. Whereas there'd be some other kind of enforcement mechanism for this kind of thing. I just don't know how to grapple with it, because you know what? Most people don't do what I do. Most people just keep their head down, especially white people, because they're so afraid of being called racist. And that's kind of why I feel more of an obligation to stand up, because I know the way people are scared to do it.
Yes, I mean, what I've heard specifically about Indian immigration into Canada is it's something in the order of 2 million people over the last several years. And when you talk about the population of Canada being somewhere around 30 million total, imagine 10% of the country was just imported from one specific region in just the last few years. What that does to especially housing stock in the big metropolitan areas. I've been reading about, what this was a cliche in New York for many years, but a 1-bedroom apartment where maybe 7 people are living. And, when you talk about sort of, to be crude, the horny Indian boys who are going to the nude beaches to ogle women, like, they may be just, this is true in India also, just young men. They have no privacy to themselves because they're in such overcrowded housing conditions. They're just fucking young and horny. And there was nothing like that in their society. And they can just go and sort of, get their jollies by just ogling women on the beach. And it's definitely a cultural clash at best. And I'm also jealous because there are no nude beaches in my state. I know there are some in the U.S., but as someone who respects the work of Dr. Jack Cruz, I wish I could sun my nether regions, but I don't have any private outdoor space. I live in a condo community.
Yeah, it's been a 326% increase as of the most recent numbers out of 2023. It's only gone up since then.
Increase what? Where?
In terms of the migrant population, annual immigration trends from India in Canada. So I think permanent residents, it was like 32,000 in 2013, and then it went up to 139,000 in 2023. Projected growth, it just keeps going up, 148,000, more than 4 times.
They're saying that it's too risky to go out because, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to be pulled in. That's the issue. It's not that.
Trump said permanent residents aren't allowed to leave the country, right? That's fucking insane.
It is kind of I don't know if he said that, but I'm just saying what my lawyer told me. My lawyer was like, hey, we recommend don't leaving the country for a little bit. So just so that until you get a citizenship, and then you can go ahead.
Not just conservatives, but Republicans, MAGA Republicans, crying because, I shouldn't say that, that's too pejorative. I'm fascinated by their outcry because a person was fired by his employer for behaving in a way.
Resigned.
Oh, I'm sorry. Julio said that he was pressured to resign. It was under duress. That this person experienced consequences for behavior that he participated in online, things that he said online. It's like, are y'all new to being Negroes?